Hey guys, this is KSP with Tape, and today you join me for episode 13 of KSP A New World, and we start with the launch of, well, something we haven't really done before. It is a launch vehicle we've launched many a time, but it is a mission we have not done so far. This is a satellite bound for orbit around the Sun, which, well, I guess we have done. We're heading to other planets, and actually a few satellites that were placed near the Moon were kicked out into orbits like this, but this is actually, we're being paid to put it there, and it's going to a specific orbit to complete a specific task. So yeah, we'll just speed through this because it is, again, a fairly standard launch, and yeah, let's just start heading up on our Python 1.1. I like to mention the vehicle I'm using just for, well, because I'm super nerdy, and I'm sure some of you are too, so you'll like to know the vehicles and things. But yeah, pretty decent launch. I think we're getting a decent amount of money for this, and hopefully it will, you know, subsidize a few interesting inventions and interesting ideas I have. I'm starting to get to the point where my missions kind of need bigger rockets, and often you can't actually find funding. Like a mission that'll pay for a really big rocket, so you kind of have to do a mission prior to do that sort of thing. I mean, that hasn't really taken place yet, but I imagine it kind of will. But anyway, let's send this off into orbit around the Sun. Oh no, we need to get into orbit around Kerbal before we can get into orbit around the Sun. Although that's not actually a prerequisite. No. Perquisite? No, prerequisite for being in orbit. Because you could obviously just go out, you know, super normal to Kerbal, so you never get into orbit. You're just in a very, very highly elliptical, not ballistic arc, but just highly elliptical arc. But anyway, yeah, this will require planning because I need to be in a specific place. So this looks pretty good, although I can't see the orbit I'm supposed to be on and focus on Kerbal. I have to focus on the Sun to see the little the circle that's telling me where I need to be. So it's a little hard to plan, but I think I nailed it, or got it near enough. As per NASA. Although in fairness, I do joke a lot about, well, that's near enough, just like NASA. Although the thing is, with space probes and things, you don't actually really know when the engine's gonna completely shut off, because the valves don't close instantly. So there's always a little bit of extra, you know, fuel bleeding out. So sometimes it is a bit of a near enough sort of situation. You have to make corrections and things. So, you know, I'm not entirely wrong. So yeah, let's just head out over Kerbal and see that final sunrise until we're in orbit permanently, and we'll see the Sun forever and ever and ever until it implodes, or well, would probably just turn into a kind of a red giant. I'm trying to remember if it's Red Dwarf or Red Giant. Red Dwarf is a TV show. Yeah, it'll probably do that sort of thing, but it's hard to tell because this Sun's technically. So, well, in real life it wouldn't work because it's 10 times smaller than our Sun, so it wouldn't achieve fusion. It would maybe be something like Jupiter. But anyway, yeah, as I was talking about bigger rockets, this is my first 2.5... Oh no, this is my second 2.5 meter rocket, I believe. But it is a very big one and cost about 30 grand. And this whole mission together cost about 60 grand. And it's going to the Moon. I have to do a couple of tasks to make this economically viable, and I had to spend a lot of money unlocking the technology. Probably about 100 grand on technology unlocks, and then 60 grand on the vehicle, but obviously the technology unlocks will be useful forever and ever and ever. But yeah, this is bound for the Moon. I need to plant a flag, and I need to take some EVA reports and things like that to get, well, paid for it. Foolishly, I thought, a poodle engine, that'll be fine. But then I upgraded the size of the stage, and now the poodle engine doesn't really have enough thrust. So, there's only 200 kilonewtons pushing on this, so I start to fall back to Kerbal. And I thought, that is just awful. However, that is not the worst of my troubles. You may notice if you looked very closely at this vehicle, there are no solar panels, and I haven't unlocked RTGs yet, which means there is no power generation on this, and there are men, which means that if I kept going, they would die, and I don't want to lose Kerbals. So yeah, this is a failed mission anyway. However, I did try to get to orbit anyway. We can call this a test mission, I guess, because we have never taken 3 Kerbals to orbit. It is an incredibly expensive test mission on a very heavy rocket and a very expensive everything else. So, this wouldn't really class as a test mission for sending 3 Kerbals to orbit, because for 3 Kerbals I could have just used a much smaller vehicle and a much less moon lander equipped sort of thing. But anyway, now I have to drift through the atmosphere and try and stay afloat and hopefully stay outside, keep my apoaps outside of the atmosphere so that I can get into orbit. Only to realize, of course, that I don't have any solar panels. I have to send this back, and this has been a very expensive test, and expensive tests are bad. Should have slapped it on a giant solid rocket booster and saved money. But yeah, this has got me thinking once again about reusable rockets, which I did do a heavy emphasis on in my old series. But yeah, hopefully I'll be able to do something with that in this series as well. So yeah, I'm just taking a few reports, trying to get a little bit of science out of this so it isn't a total failure. And this is, I think, the first time 3 Kerbals have been to orbit. Probably the first time an engineer or a scientist has ever been to orbit, but obviously Jeb has been many a time. And luckily the Bill and Bob will level up. Get some XP, level up to level 1, which will make them more efficient at their trade. So it is not a total failure. It is not great. And I was planning on kind of trying to land this on Kerbin, because it is a lander. But then I realized, well, obviously the thrust won't be high enough. And we're actually bound for water, so it would be very dangerous. You can see there it was a 2-stage lander, which I do like the idea of, a landing stage and a takeoff stage. Not... well, probably, yeah, well, I'd say not that efficient, but it needs less fuel because you don't have to lug around all that extra stuff. I don't know if it's economical because I have to pay for second engines and things, but still, it was, interesting. Anyway, I've been just priming all these parachutes, although they will all open at different times, so it'll be a bit jolty for the guys in here. Well, there's a bloody engineer in there, and he should have put on solar panels, so that's why he gets jolty landings. That's just how it works. Anyway, coughing. Anyway, now, however, we are moving on to one of the most important bits of the episode. Arriving at Eve, a very alien world, nothing like our own. Probably was nothing ever like our own. So we will hopefully unlock Eve's secrets, figure out why it is so purple, figure out why it has such a hefty cloud layer, and figure out what is in those oceans. Because that is hotly contested amongst the Kerbal community. Some maintain it is just rocket fuel. Some say it might be very, very, very strong and potent acid of some kind. I maintain it is purple Mountain Dew. So if you'd like to weigh in, is there a purple Mountain Dew? Maybe it's not. Maybe it's all on Eve. But anyway, let's take a few reports and hopefully unlock some of the secrets of that purpley Mountain Dew below us. Anyway, let's transmit this back. And I think that we did just get our first objective, transmitting data from the space around Eve. And this probe will be doing all of the objectives to explore Eve for scientific data from the space near Eve, getting orbit around Eve, landing on Eve, and returning science from the surface of Eve. The actual surface module is quite small, because I wasn't sure how much I could actually get through this atmosphere, because it's quite deadly. It is easy to land on because it's such a thick atmosphere, but I thought it would be very deadly. I was actually wrong. The atmosphere surprised me a lot. I'm not sure if it's a glitch or something, but it was kind of weird. And there is a weird texture glitch here, where the clouds in Eve, because they're added as a mod, are actually drawn on top of the orbital line, as you can see there. So you can't see the orbital line because the clouds are in the way for some reason, which, well, I reckon is just probably a kind of a stack trace sort of error, where it draws first and draws lines, then draws clouds. I don't know. It's all very complicated. Actually, no, it's not. It's just the order at which you draw things on screen. But anyway, a few more reports and another mission complete. That was left at 4 times time accelerated, unlike the other ones, because it's fairly standard. But yeah, Eve does look quite weird with a thick cloud layer, because it's all pretty much one texture, so it does look kind of odd. But as you descend through the haze, it is quite cool, and you will start to see the oceans and the land and such. But anyway, I've put my periaps quite low down, at about 40 kilometers, which is pretty low down for Eve. That should slow me down sufficiently to hopefully, land safely. I'm a little worried that these landing legs will burn off. However, my worries are misplaced, because we slow down so much in this high atmosphere that by the time we hit, like, really thick atmosphere where we would probably burn up, we're just not going fast enough. Which was it? I wasn't like, oh, thank God we didn't burn up. I was like, I wanted to see the goddamn fire. I mean, entry on Eve is usually pretty nerve-wracking for a little bit while you slow down, because it's pretty thick and soupy and you burn up a lot, but apparently not. So yeah, let's just drift down into the oceans, drift down through this super thick cloud layer. It's like a lot thicker than when we landed on Duna. Once you're on the surface, you can pretty much hardly see the sun. And you could hardly see anything through the clouds, although as you got closer you could see some things. But anyway, let's touch down and use these landing legs as kind of buoyancy so that we don't fall over and potentially lose some things. So 4 times time accelerate, my spinning was a little crazy. When I get bored, I just spin the camera because it was falling so goddamn slowly. This is real speed, but yeah, it is falling rather slowly, but it's better than falling too fast, as we will touch on in future parts of this episode. Anyway, let's take our report, and that's another piece of our mission completed, and let's finish off the Explore Eve mission by sending out our signal from the surface of Eve. And that is our 3 missions, landing on Eve, transmitting data, and the whole Explore Eve, and that's a lot of money. Money is good. I can't read the exact numbers, but I think it was a lot. Yeah, as I've said, I can't read the exact numbers in post-production because it has to play back at half resolution. But anyway, yeah, just transmit some temperature scans, and yeah, I didn't have any mystery go on this just because it would have been kind of difficult to fit, and because I just wanted a simple probe that would definitely work, and actually I built it so it would probably not burn up. Shows how much I know about the composition of Eve. I think it's something to do with Ferrum Aerospace. I do quite like Ferrum Aerospace, but it is a little weird mod and does screw a few things up when I try and launch stupidly. But anyway, moving on to what I was talking about earlier, reusable rockets. I wanted to kind of emulate Grasshopper, the Kerbal, not the Kerbal space program, the SpaceX kind of rocket stage thing. I was going to use a Rockamax, but it's too tall, so I'm actually going back to an old design from one of my old series called Solar Civilization, where I use these 5 KW rocketry engines in a cluster. Each of those engines is like 2 different bits, so yeah, that's basically what that is. And I'm going to use the MechJeb Translatron to control my rise and descent and do a quick hop. I have 1 full tank in here. Yeah, I'm not sure if I want to use this, because this could be very effective. I know it to be effective. I've used it in another series, but I think it might be a bit like, well, I don't know, you might be bored of seeing it if you watched all of Solar Civilization, so I could build something else. But this is one of the few things that works, because you need very low profile engines to get those landing legs to touch the floor and not break off your engines. But yeah, you can see I did a little jump, and then hopefully we'll slow down to 0, although I did fall a little bit, and then we'll just touch down softly as possible, because well, this was just a quick jump to make sure everything still worked, because this is pretty expensive. This cost 30 grand, so I don't want to lose it. And it almost looked like it was going to flip over there. But yeah, that worked. I would like to implement this or something like this in the series as at least a reasonable first stage, although I know it's very difficult to do from past experience, but it is a very effective way. But anyway, back to big old Rockamaxes that are dirty and unreusable. So you can see here the engine's too big to put landing legs around it, and it would be kind of annoying to build a structure all around it to land. So yeah, I'm just going to probably wouldn't use a Rockamax for a reusable rocket. But anyway, you can see this launch profile is actually a little steep. That's because I'm having trouble tipping over in Ferrum Aerospace. I blame the mix of SAS and the wings and things, but I do get it over, and I just tilt over much later, but much harder, so, you know, it's not that bad. But still, I want to really figure out a way to sort out my launch profiles. They're not great. And this is like the old rocket, however, it has been upgraded with a Skipper engine as its second stage engine, because we need a little more thrust. The Poodle, well, it got me into orbit, as you saw, but it just wasn't, well, it was, I wasted a lot of fuel being back in the atmosphere, and very importantly, I brought solar panels, which are pretty damn important. So yeah, let's target the moon and do our standard thing, basically burn prograde when the moon rises over Kerbin. Yeah, so if ever you want to go to the moon and you don't feel like planning, just as you see here, as the moon rises above Kerbin, you just light your engines up and you'll probably get there, unless you have a very low thrust to weight ratio, then you might want to burn a little earlier, but that's a pretty good rule of thumb. I use it for all my maneuvers. Anyway, I'm trying to get to the poles to take some of those visual surveys, because the problem with this is each of these, well, this whole mission costs about 60,000 funds, and I've got a mission to plant a flag, which will pay me about 40-something thousand, maybe 50, including the advance, and then I've got to also take a couple of EV airports on the surface to get a little extra money just to cover it and make myself a little profit. Because profit is good. So yeah, I just need to make a quick correction here with this stage to put myself on the right trajectory, well, nearer to the right trajectory to get to those places on the poles. Although they're not actually on the poles, they're a little below the poles. I think they still technically count as the Midlands. But anyway, that stage is burned out and will be flung off, hopefully into... Oh no, it's going to be flung off into a highly elliptical and inclined orbit around Kerbal. I was hoping it would go into a heliocentric orbit. I guess it would be heliocentric since it's called Kerbal. Although heliocentric, I mean, the sun isn't called Helo, so or maybe Halo or something. But maybe it's because it's comprised largely of helium. Well, mainly hydrogen, but I guess being fused into helium. But anyway, let's put ourselves in an orbit around the moon and do a few more corrections, I guess, because we're going to want to touch down. So yeah, let's just, again, obviously burn prograde a little bit and get ourselves into something of a circular orbit. And I do love being in polar orbits because you get to drift down with a huge amount of the moon on one side and Kerbal in the background, and it does just look freaking beautiful. I know I went all crazy about how beautiful Kerbal Space Program is last episode, but it just is. Even though the textures aren't crazy and awesome, I'm always blown away just by some of the shots. Like sometimes when you see Kerbal with clouds from the side of the moon, or you look up at the clouds and the ridge and the sun on Duna, or I don't know, looking at Jewel in the night sky on Lathe. There's some pretty great shots you can get in Kerbal Space Program, and I think the atmospheric enhancement stuff, like the cloud mods and the better atmospheres, all just make it look even nicer. And it's just, I don't know, maybe it's just a precedent of looking at a planet from far away, but it does just look just great. But anyway, let's put ourselves on the right trajectory to land at this this site. I am a little worried about fuel because I spent a lot of it doing orbital maneuvers. But as long as this bottom stage can touch me down, I know I can get back because this is a two-stage lander as per before. So I mean, once it's touched down, it'll just break off and fly away, and it leaves all the science stuff on the surface, so that it's I don't know what the word I'm looking for. So it's not just overmassed for no reason, I guess. Overmassed? Well, whatever. But anyway, yeah. So and this is called Horizon, by the way, because it's new horizons for multiple Kerbals, taking them further, well, not further than they've ever been, but taking more further and things. But anyway, let's get closer to the surface. Oh, that looks a little close, and we look to be going a little fast, and this little LV-909 isn't providing a great deal of thrust. And you can see on the surface we're coming in, it's like 500 meters, oh geez, and we're running out of fuel, but that looks like probably enough, but we don't have enough time to slow down, I don't think. Oh god. Oh no. And then we slam into the ground. But we're flung away. Most of the lander is intact, but not the engine. However, do not fear, because we just need to break away if the SAS will stop fighting me. And then just break away. Break that bottom stage off. Break it off. But just goddamn break it off. Just decouple it. It's not going to help you. And then ignite. I probably shouldn't have decoupled it. I probably should have used the landing legs to cushion the fall, because I lost my return engine. We lost the whole thing. There's no return engine. There's nothing. I should have left the landing legs on. It might have shielded the engine. But, yeah, we're going to need a rescue mission. But we're here now. We're alive. We're going to get the goddamn job done. Because that rescue mission is going to be a similar price. So we better get some money in the bank. So, plant a flag on the moon. That'll get us most of the money for this mission. And then just take a few EVA reports. Yeah, that was a blow. And there's no quick loading in this, because this is hardcore, and, so yeah. I should have left the bottom stage on, and it might have landed, and then I could have escaped, or just decoupled it earlier so that I could have used the little engine to do what I needed to do, but, it's because I'm used to landing with a much higher thrust-to-weight ratio, so, yeah, and this has a very low thrust-to-weight ratio. It works fine, as long as I start burning earlier, but yeah. It's another Midlands landing. The caption will be shit, because we're pretty much screwed. The first flight / failure of Horizon, and then just the names, Bill, Bob, and Jeb. Now, we can't lose these guys. We need them back, because they're the big three. Jeb is my most experienced pilot. These two are now my most experienced engineer and scientist, and we don't leave Kerbal to die, because we don't have any constraints on when we can launch. However, we did lose our life support systems, so we only have a day Luckily, most of the life support that we did use on the way here was taken from the service module, which is now scattered around the moon. But we only have about a day before they just die. But anyway, skipping ahead, Jeb decided, oh no, this is, I think Bob. Bob decided he was going to go and take all the EVA reports he needed to take, because I think he's the scientist. Yeah, he is the scientist. So he's going to go and, take some EVA reports and from around the place, and they'll complete those, some of the taking observations of the moon mission, and that's all very important, getting a little more money, a little more science, making this mission worthwhile. But yeah, and now it's just heading to the next one, I guess. Looks like we have been paid for our mission. I wanted to see if we get any EVA report above the surface, but apparently we've already taken it because this is the Midlands, although we can take a surface sample, because we haven't done one of them with the Midlands yet, so that'll be a nice little extra bit of science. I think I already may have taken it. But anyway, let's fly back. And this flight did take a little while, so I'll skip ahead until the landing. But yeah, there's our little pod in the vast desert that is the moon. So yeah, now it's just running over to it. However, again, this run did take freaking ages because it's Kerbal's on the moon. So skipping ahead with a nice little... Oh, well, it didn't play me the crossfade. Hopefully it will play you the crossfade. But anyway, we will need to mount a rescue mission, and we will do that in the next episode. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this. This has been well, a bit of a faily episode, but nice to land on Eve. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this. This has been episode 13 of KSP: A New World. I will see you next time.